Sensationalist allegations concerning the monarchy played upon his anxieties and stoked his suspicions regarding the establishment. A silent struggle has always existed between the Prince of Wales and the Sussexes, defined by quiet friction and unresolved doubts. For years, the discord remained constantly present without ever reaching a definitive conclusion or resolution. Now, however, it appears William has finally chosen to establish a firm boundary with a startling proclamation. He confirmed devastating updates regarding Meghan's standing, sending shockwaves of disbelief throughout the United Kingdom. The occasion felt weighty, conclusive, and impossible to overlook for anyone watching the unfolding events. What precisely did the prince disclose, and why did he choose this specific moment to act? Was this intended to restore tranquility after years of theatrics, or has it invited an even greater royal tempest? The initial sign that something exceptional was unfolding occurred when Kensington Palace dispatched urgent notifications to major media outlets. They requested attendance within 2 hours for an unscheduled declaration of national significance from the prince. The brief provided no specifics regarding the topic, merely stating that the prince would deliver a personal address without taking questions. This unusual urgency sent reporters scrambling toward the palace, while theories erupted across social platforms regarding the emergency. Camera crews rushed to position their gear within the designated zone at the royal residence in London. The mood was thick with expectation and bewilderment as everyone attempted to surmise what might be announced. Some guessed at potential family health concerns, while others questioned if a security threat had arisen. Astute observers noticed the California-based couple had been strangely silent online, wondering if this involved the pair who had caused such disruption. When William finally stood before the gathered press, his physical demeanor was the first thing noted by the crowd. He appeared exhausted and tense, with shadows beneath his eyes, suggesting a significant lack of rest. His jaw was clenched with resolve, yet his gaze revealed an inner emotional struggle he fought to restrain. He wore a dark formal suit rather than a uniform, carrying no script, indicating he would speak candidly. William started by expressing gratitude to the press for assembling on such brief notice for the statement. He announced a decision reached after months of agonizing deliberation within the family institution regarding the situation. He paused to take a steadying breath before proceeding with the difficult statement he had prepared. The monarchy had arrived at a final and irreversible verdict concerning the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. The pair would be permanently divested of all lingering titles, privileges, and officialties, effectively, immediately. There would be no future bargaining and no potential for reconciliation or part-time service in the years ahead. Cameras caught the slight tremor in William's hands as he continued his address to the world. He clarified that this conclusion was not reached lightly or with haste, but with deep consideration. The family had attempted for years to locate a compromise, allowing the couple independence while keeping royal connections. However, it had become evident that such a balanced arrangement was simply not feasible for the institution. The couple's consistent public criticisms and refusal to honor basic discretion made continued association impossible to sustain. William then delivered a line that drew audible gasps from the gathered media corps in the room. He declared that Meghan specifically would never be permitted at any royal function or residence ever again. This ban applied to nuptials, memorials, coronations, and even intimate family reunions without exception. The judgment was absolute and would not be reviewed regardless of future pleas or shifting situations. William's tone was steely, yet undeniable sorrow marked his face as he delivered this harsh decree. He explained that Harry might retain limited contact under strict conditions, but his wife's separation was absolute. The children would not be acknowledged as having royal status or any place within the line of succession. They would be regarded as private citizens, lacking any claim to hereditary titles or special privileges. This marked an unprecedented severance of ties, exceeding any measures taken during past modern scandals or conflicts. William concluded by noting he was authorized by the king to deliver this message on behalf of the family. The verdict carried the full endorsement of the king, the queen, and all senior working members. He stressed this was the unified judgment of the institution, not merely his personal stance on the matter. He then departed without accepting inquiries, leaving a room of stunned reporters to broadcast the news. Within moments, the narrative dominated every news cycle and digital platform globally as people reacted. Observers struggled to comprehend the magnitude of William's declaration and the permanent exile involved in the decision. This represented a dramatic escalation that few had foreseen, despite years of mounting friction between the parties. Queries immediately surfaced regarding what sparked such drastic measures at this specific juncture in time. What had transpired behind the scenes to drive the family toward such a total rupture of relations? Palace officials had harbored deep reservations about her history from the very start of the relationship. She was an unconventional candidate to wed a senior royal due to her specific background and history. Being American was unusual, though not unprecedented, yet her profession as an actress raised concerns about image management. Most worrying to traditionalists was her previous marriage, which had ended in a difficult divorce years prior. Her first union lasted only 2 years before dissolving under somewhat ambiguous circumstances and conflicting reports. Rumors persisted that shifting ambitions and career desires had played a significant role in that separation. Reports claimed she exited the marriage swiftly when superior opportunities seemingly appeared in her professional life. Her former spouse reportedly felt blindsided by how quickly she moved forward after the relationship ended. This history generated warnings regarding loyalty and her willingness to discard bonds that no longer served her. More problematic for the palace was her Hollywood career and the specific roles she had undertaken previously. Her most famous role was in a legal drama, which provided her highest profile work to date. Officials reviewing her portfolio were unsettled by certain elements of the show's content and storylines. The series featured romantic storylines with intimate sequences that traditionalists found concerning for a royal bride. While standard for Hollywood, these scenes shocked senior royals who valued extreme modesty and professional discretion. Further vetting of her early career revealed more material from her struggling years establishing herself. She had accepted various modeling jobs and minor roles that included somewhat risque imagery and themes. There were images from lifestyle magazines where she posed in glamorous or revealing attire for the cameras. Small roles in films placed her in situations the palace deemed crude or lowbrow for royalty. Advisors compiled dossiers on this past work, warning that it would inevitably resurface to cause embarrassment. Their predictions proved accurate almost instantly, once the relationship became public knowledge to the wider world. Tabloids immediately began circulating every edgy photo and scene they could locate from her archives. The palace faced the reality of a future princess whose history contradicted their stated values of dignity. Some insiders argued that her past should preclude her from marrying into the firm entirely. They cited historical examples where matches were rejected because candidates failed to meet some institutional standards. However, the world had evolved, and blocking a marriage based on background was no longer viable. Harry was not the direct heir, granting him more latitude in his choice of partner and spouse. Public sentiment had shifted, meaning rejection based on her career would appear snobbish and archaic to voters. Yet concerns remained and influenced how the institution managed her integration into the royal fold. Officials determined they must carefully curate her image to make her acceptable as a royal figure. This involved controlling her wardrobe, her speech, and her public demeanor rigidly at all times. It meant establishing strict protocols regarding her conduct and interactions with the press and the public. Essentially, they attempted to erase her past and mold her into someone fitting royal expectations perfectly. This strategy was destined to fail, as it required her to become fundamentally different from herself. She had constructed her identity around self-promotion and the careful cultivation of public attention for years. She was unsuited by temperament to accept the restrictions that royal life necessitated for members. The effort to transform her was thwarted by her resistance to control and resentment of criticism. The cultural gap between American celebrity ambition and British tradition created deep misunderstandings from the beginning. She had learned that success required visibility and active management of public perception through the media. The royal family operated on opposing principles, where dignity stemmed from restraint and silence in public. These conflicting worldviews made significant interpersonal conflict practically inevitable from the start of the union. When Harry first introduced her, reactions ranged from polite distance to concealed worry among relatives. William was notably cautious, urging his brother to slow down and truly understand her before committing. His concerns stemmed not from prejudice, but from a genuine fear that Harry was rushing blindly. He had witnessed too many individuals struggle and collapse under the immense pressure of scrutiny. The Queen met her several times and departed with serious, private reservations she shared with advisors. She sensed something performative in the presentation rather than something entirely genuine during their meetings. The monarch worried that someone lacking authenticity in private would crack under public pressure eventually. Prince Charles held concerns focused on the vast differences in background and experience between the pair. He valued continuity and worried how an outsider would adapt to such a peculiar culture. He also feared the complex social dynamics that would arise regarding her heritage in British society. He worried the couple was not fully prepared for the challenges they would soon face together. Harry was deeply enamored and refused to entertain any warnings or advice from his family members. He interpreted the caution as bias and a rejection of his partner by his relatives. He became defensive when his brother attempted to discuss these hesitations regarding the relationship speed. The sibling relationship, once so supportive, began to fracture over this determination to proceed regardless. William felt a mistake was being made, but realized pushing too hard would only alienate Harry. The 2018 wedding proceeded with immense fanfare as millions watched the ceremony at the chapel. It seemed to signal a hopeful new era, yet the family remained divided privately behind closed doors. Staff members were already worried about how difficult the transition might be for the new member. From her first days, the new Duchess clashed with staff over rules she found arbitrary. She resented instructions on attire and objected to protocols regarding public speech and approved as topics. She found the palace hierarchy offensive and treated subordinates with dismissive brusqueness and impatience. Staff trying to assist her reported subjecting to angry outbursts and unreasonable directives on a regular basis. The most significant issues arose regarding her treatment of her personal team and support staff. She cycled through multiple assistants within her first year, with many resigning quickly due to stress. Official reasons were vague, but internal gossip painted a picture of a difficult employer to please. Former employees described the atmosphere as one of fear and constant tension within the office. When formal complaints about workplace conduct reached senior officials, an investigation was launched to review them. Current and former staff were interviewed regarding their experiences working for her during that period. The inquiry concluded there was substance to the claims regarding policy violations and conduct issues. However, the full results were never published, and no visible consequences ensued for the Duchess. This secrecy fueled speculation that evidence of misconduct was suppressed to avoid a public scandal. Tensions intensified as it became clear she would not adapt to expectations or accept guidance. Stories leaked regarding conflicts with other royals and various palace employees to the press. While some reports were exaggerated, enough were grounded in reality to form a negative picture. It portrayed someone fundamentally unsuited for royal life, who created misery for those around her. Her pattern of disregarding protocol began almost immediately after joining the family as a working member. Her first major breach occurred during a tour when she fidgeted constantly during events and appearances. Experienced royals maintained composure, but she seemed unable to develop this discipline despite instructions. Dress code violations became more brazen as she decided rules did not apply to her specifically. She wore prohibited nail colors and styles deemed too revealing for royal standards at public events. She chose attention-grabbing outfits when occasions called for subdued elegance, ignoring advice from the stylists. More seriously, she began making unauthorized statements on political and social issues to the public. She spoke on activism in ways that implied specific policy positions, violating royal neutrality rules. Comments on leaders and elections were deemed completely inappropriate for a working royal to make. When staff reminded her of the rules, she reportedly claimed they were silencing her voice. The situation reached a crisis when she secretly cooperated with authors writing a biography about them. Despite signing confidentiality agreements, she authorized friends to speak on her behalf to the writers. The most egregious example was her cooperation with a sympathetic book presenting their narrative exclusively. The palace knew she facilitated the project despite her public denials of involvement in the book. The workplace allegations represented the most serious accusations against her conduct during her time there. Staff reported receiving demands at early hours accompanied by harsh complaints and impossible deadlines. If tasks were not completed instantly, the reaction was described as verbally aggressive and threatening. She reportedly reduced young staff members to tears with severe criticism and dismissive behavior. One account described her shouting at an employee before acting perfectly normal moments later in public. Allegations included claims that she deliberately undermined the confidence of a young aide systematically. Another complaint described demands that staff violate rules, only to blame them later for the consequences. Several people reported she would deny events occurred and accuse staff of lying about them. The pattern suggested a lack of empathy and a view of staff as objects to use. The decision to investigate but withhold findings allowed rumors to fill the void of information. Some defended her, suggesting complaints were exaggerated or motivated by bias against her independence. Others believed the allegations were credible and proved the institution protected bad behavior by seniors. Her violations extended to how she engaged with public attention and social media platforms. She desired direct control over her image rather than working through official channels and teams. She pushed for separate accounts rather than coordinated activities with other royals and households. When denied, she apparently explored ways to communicate outside official restrictions and established protocols. These repeated violations convinced officials she would not adapt to her position or its requirements. She desired the platform of the role while rejecting the necessary obligations that came with it. She viewed rules as obstacles to overcome rather than necessary structures for the institution. This fundamental misunderstanding made her continued role increasingly untenable for everyone involved in the system. The interview given to Oprah Winfrey represented the ultimate escalation in the conflict with the family. The couple had left Britain a year earlier amid acrimony and tension with the household. They chose to air grievances on international television in a damaging manner rather than seeking peace. This showed they had abandoned hope of reconciliation and focused on controlling the narrative publicly. The most explosive allegation involved claims of bias within the family regarding their son's heritage. She suggested concerns about his appearance influenced decisions about titles and security for the child. These accusations struck at the heart of the monarchy's claim to represent everyone in the nation. She also claimed she was denied assistance when experiencing severe mental distress during her pregnancy. She described feeling desperate and isolated, only to be rebuffed by human resources when asking for help. This portrayal of the palace as unfeeling generated enormous sympathy for her narrative globally. The couple suggested the institution deliberately failed to defend her against false stories in the press. Harry specifically accused staff of planting negative stories to deflect from other issues in the family. These claims painted a picture of a family that had worked to drive them out deliberately. The impact on the royal family was devastating and immediate following the broadcast of the program. The claims of bias put the institution in an impossible position regarding a response or denial. The family issued a brief statement noting the issues would be addressed privately by them. This diplomatic response satisfied no one and was interpreted as dismissive by their supporters. William was reportedly furious, feeling Harry had committed an unforgivable betrayal of the family trust. He objected to the allegations which he felt were designed to damage reputations unjustly. He reportedly told friends the version of events bore little resemblance to reality or truth. The Queen was said to be deeply hurt by the interview's suggestions regarding her leadership. The portrayal of the family as cruel was especially painful given her history of service. Charles found himself in an awkward position, having his relationship publicly dissected by his son. Harry claimed his father stopped taking calls and cut him off financially during the transition. These revelations about the father-son breakdown were excruciating for the future king to endure publicly. It damaged the ability to reconcile, as private conversations might be broadcast later to the world. The interview destroyed any realistic possibility of them returning to the fold in the future. The damage done meant the family could never trust them effectively again with private matters. The bridges had been burned completely and permanently by their actions and statements. What followed were years of continued attacks through various media channels and commercial projects. The decision to step back initially came as a shock to the family and the public. The couple released a statement declaring their intention to become financially independent while supporting the Queen. They planned to split their time between the UK and North America moving forward. The announcement came without prior consultation, a major breach of protocol and courtesy. The family was blindsided by plans that had never been agreed upon or discussed. The Queen was hurt that Harry had not spoken with her beforehand about the decision. William felt ambushed by his brother's refusal to discuss the situation first with the family. Charles was frustrated by the belief that Harry could dictate his own terms to the monarchy. Intense negotiations followed regarding what their departure would actually look like in practice. They wanted to retain titles while having freedom to pursue commercial deals and income. They envisioned a hybrid model representing the monarchy while building independent careers as celebrities. Officials determined this arrangement was unworkable and unacceptable for the institution to support. You could not represent the monarchy part-time while pursuing private interests that might conflict. The concern was they would trade on their status to secure business deals for themselves. It was an all-or-nothing proposition. If they wanted out, it must be complete separation. The final arrangement reached represented a defeat for their hopes of a hybrid royal role. They would stop using their titles officially and give up patronages and military appointments. They would no longer receive public funding and would repay renovation costs for their home. In return, they gained the freedom to live where they wanted and work freely. They moved to California and began signing massive deals with streaming giants almost immediately. They bought an expensive estate and began building lives as American celebrities and producers. Yet they continued to present themselves publicly as members of the royal family in America. Every project emphasized their status while they attacked the institution that gave them that status. The contradiction between leaving and profiting created ongoing tensions that were never resolved. Harry and Meghan wanted independence, but also the recognition that came with royalty and titles. The family felt they were trying to have it both ways unfairly and destructively. The situation deteriorated as they continued to portray the family negatively in interviews and books. Harry's memoir was particularly devastating in its intimate revelations about private moments and arguments. The publication represented yet another indication that he could not be trusted with privacy. Each new attack made the family more determined to sever the relationship entirely. Senior royals began discussing definitive action to resolve the situation permanently and decisively. The current arrangement of hostility from within the family was untenable for the long term. They needed to either return completely or be cut off entirely from the institution. The time for compromises and half measures had finally passed for the royal household. The decision William announced was the end point of a long process of deliberation. By the time he spoke, the outcome had been accepted as inevitable by the family. The family had initially tried containment rather than confrontation with the original deal they struck. The hope was that distance would cool tempers and allow reintegration at a later date. That hope eroded with each new interview and public statement the couple released. Frustration hardened into resignation as ambiguity became the problem for the monarchy. The only way forward was not reform, but absolute finality in the separation. The terms announced reflected the thinking that there would be no reinterpretation of the rules. Use of titles was prohibited entirely, not merely discouraged as it had been previously. Financial separation was absolute, with no behind-the-scenes assistance provided to the couple. They would stand or fall on their own earnings and reputations from this point forward. The exclusion extended to intimate family events like weddings and funerals effectively forever. Meghan was named explicitly, with her exclusion being permanent and irreversible by the Crown. Harry's situation was marginally less absolute, but strict in practice regarding any contact. The family made it clear this was not a reconciliation strategy, but a permanent break. The children stood at the center of the most painful consequences of this decision. They would not be recognized as royals in any official documentation or succession lists. The decision carried a cold logic, but ensured enduring resentment for the parties involved. The announcement triggered an identity crisis with real consequences for her image and brand. Her positioning as a reforming royal figure vanished overnight without the framework to support it. She faced the challenge of redefining herself in a skeptical media landscape without the titles. Harry faced a parallel reckoning regarding his status as a prince in exile without a home. Once the connection was severed, the tension that fueled his narrative dissolved into history. He was no longer an insider speaking from experience, but a memory of the institution. Industry observers questioned if they could deliver content without royal access or gossip. The shift was subtle at first, but became unmistakable over time as interest waned. Underlying all of this was the accumulated weight of years of disputes and betrayals.